You forgot?
Oh, well, no, I'm glad that they were thinking about it.
July, Senate appropriation, April 10th.
Placeholder.
We're going through fiscal year 26 budget as passed by the House.
Greg Nixon, Joint Fiscal Office. So I think we left off on page 58, section E200. This is standard annual language allowing the Office of the Attorney General to retain 1/2 of the state share of any recoveries from Medicaid fraud settlements, excluding interest.
Is that normal?
Standard annual language.
Yeah.
Standard. SAL. Okay. Now I'm going to start.
So this is another SAL section. E208, public safety, authorizing the commissioner to enter into a performance-based contract with the Essex County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
Section E209, also standard annual language, directing $35,000 of the appropriation in section B209 to be available to the Southern Vermont Wilderness Search and Rescue Team.
Also, SAL version. What was
that? Section E312 or 212, public safety. This is a SAL section, $55,000 to the Vermont Rural Fire Protection Task Force for the design of dry hydrants.
Are these dollar numbers in statute? So they're all the same?
They're not in statute, they only exist in session law. So the session law in each big bill each year creates these.
It's not like a formula, it's just always the
I can't speak to each specific one, but for instance, the dry hydrants, I don't believe there's a particular formula for arriving at that number. Section E215, military. This is related to the VSAC, National Guard Tuition Benefit Program. The House reduced this number by $100,000.
And we had mentioned that yesterday.
Yes, and
about putting it back in there, or we held it?
We held it, and then I talked to somebody, and we were going to have military connect.
I have an email.
Is it just a difference in what the actual uptake is?
That's what the House said, that there was we wanted to hear directly from the military department that they agreed with that.
Right. There was been no reversions, but they had said that they anticipated more people coming back and taking use of this fund. So leave it in there. It was with the governor's rec, I believe.
Right. Because the past years they've reverted quite a bit because they haven't used it, but they're anticipating greater use. So the GovRec was 1319.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll leave it open until we hear from the military code. Okay.
E219, another annual section, directing part of the appropriation from B219, $1,000 for the Vermont Medal Program, $2,000 for the Governor's Veterans Advisory Council, $7,500 for the Veterans Day Parade, and $10,000 for Boys State and Girls State.
That's also SAL.
Also SAL.
Okay.
Section E232, this is another annual language section. This is a grant from the Secretary of State to the Vermont Access Network to maintain current operations and programming.
Did you oppose that one? I know.
And this is the base amount created, so we can close that out.
Section E236.1 was language added by the House. This is clarifying that the $1.8 million enterprise fund appropriated in section B236.1 shall be used for the business-to-business website design and implementation for ordering and payment of on-premise licensees. The technical letter from the administration just recommended tweaking the of to a for, so that it would read payment for on-premise licensees. So just a grammatical correction there.
The second of, not the first one.
Correct.
I was confused when thinking it was the first one.
Or I guess technically the third of, not the second of.
So we can close that out with the technical change. Maybe we'll assume Grady can make that technical change. We trust you not to mess it up.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Section E300 on page 60, continuing on to page 61. This is standard annual language clarifying the allocation of funds appropriated in section E300.
Okay, close that out.
Salary language?
Yep. Section E300.1 was report language added by the House relating to fiscal year 2027 budget presentations from AHS and departments within AHS on residential beds for youth.
Not done that yet.
Okay, so we'll keep that open. We'll hear from health and welfare. 301.
Section E301 is standard annual language relating to funds appropriated in section D301.
Do you want to keep this open to underlines?
Well, yeah, I mean, because some of it will depend on the decisions we make for funding.
Okay,
Yeah, so there'll be different matches.
keep that open. So that would be the same for 301.1, I
Yeah.
assume.
301.1
Is
is
that different?
annual language just relating to FY26 closeout. So transfer authority for global commitment appropriations.
Okay, well, we can close that up.
Yeah. Gotcha.
E301.2 is language amending Act 113 language, which amended Act 83. So this is home-based community services, home and community-based services, just adding in an additional fiscal year. So extending spending authority for that.
Yeah, we can close that out.
Section E301.3, this is the hospital directed payment program. This was GovRec language, and the technical letter included further technical tweaks, just changing is authorized to, as it appears in multiple instances in this section, to may. No other recommended tweaks from the administration on this section.
Okay, we can close that out.
Yep.
Right.
Section E306 was added by the House. This relates to extraordinary financial relief for nursing homes and skilled nursing facilities, stating that extraordinary financial relief shall be used in rare occasions as a last resort to prevent nursing homes that are in good standing and in compliance with state rules and federal regulations from closing, and includes language directing Viva to submit a report on or before December 15th, 2025 to the relevant standing committees, containing proactive measures and targeted interventions that may be used to reduce the use and amount of extraordinary financial relief in the future.
You okay with it? Are you okay?
You don't like that?
I want to hold this.
You wanna hold it? Okay.
There's a
I'm
tiny bit,
ambivalent.
here's the tiny, and I almost want to cut this. There's a tiny bit, one of the only programs that
You're right.
we had in the budget was $500,000 last year to help recruit and attention of nurses. And we know that the problem that nursing homes have, is not being able to recruit enough nurses in their, and the year before they had $62 million they spent on traveling nurses. And what the House puts in is language for a report back for extraordinary aid, and they didn't put anything into recruit nurses. And, we have on our list $500,000 to, for that help in the recruitment of nurses. If you can't do anything about the problem, what good's the reporting? And I would. if
You're
they-
talking about recruitment, I mean, you could have recruitment in a separate section, but let's leave it open.
But leave it open. One of the things I'd say, if they want this language bad enough, give me $500,000 to recruit.
He means him personally.
No, I don't mean me personally, but there's just a little bit of, you can't do anything about the problem and you wanna, report back. Sorry.
Well, they say they're trying to figure out why, but we know it's the visiting nurse.
We know it's the visiting nurses. Where have they been?
Okay, that's open. 312,
Section
311.
E311 on page 68. This is House added language, repealing the sunset of the State Youth Council.
Okay, people okay with repealing the sunset? Yeah, closed out.
Section E312, this is standard annual language. The House made changes that you can see highlighted to ensure that this language comports with negotiated language that was decided upon last year at Act 113. So the language as recommended by the governor was the old standard annual language. The House made updates to align it with that negotiated language going forward. So this is the same as what appears in Act 113.
Okay, we closed out that.
Section E312.1 at the bottom of page 70, continuing on page 71. This is just GovRec language clarifying that it relates to the movement of the Health Equity Advisory Commission from AOA to the Department of Health.
Okay, we close that out.
And then there are other sections that touch on this issue that I would recommend holding open pending legislative discussions and review from Legislative Council. There were some recommendations in the technical letter as well. So I believe that these sections ought to stay open for the time being.
Is that all of 312? 1 and 2 and?
Extending all the way down to E312.5 on page 76.
Wait, can you say that again? Why do you think there needs to be?
There's some recommended changes in the technical letter that Legislative Council is currently reviewing, so.
All the way over to 76.
Correct.
Got it.
Okay, so we're at 312.5.
Section E312.5 is establishing the Substance Misuse Prevention Special Fund. And Section E312.6 is repealing the Substance Misuse Prevention Fund. So just update to statute relating to this codifying a substantively similar fund and repealing the old one. Both these sections were in GovRec.
Where's the repeal?
On page 77, E312.6.
Oh, I see. Okay, so those can be closed out.
Can I ask on E312.5? So 30% of the revenues raised by the cannabis excise tax, not to exceed 10 million per fiscal year, shall be deposited in this fund for substance misuse prevention. Am I right that that leaves 70% of the excise tax unobligated?
I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not clear on if there's any other pre-designated statutory allocations of it.
Is this a new
I
use?
think they're just changing the, because I thought the misuse prevention fund used to get this money from cannabis.
Right, I believe it's just, moving the fund
Okay.
in statute.
If I'm right, this is what I was talking about the other day. I couldn't remember where I saw the money moving. But, so this is already being used for misuse prevention,
That's
correct?
my understanding.
So that, I think that leaves 70% of the excise tax that flows to the bottom line. But it would be good to have an update on that.
So yeah, we'll get a whole cannabis tax
Yeah,
update.
and after school already gets the
So,
sales tax, yeah.
and then the CBD also gets some of it. Should we ask the board to come in, or does JFO want to give us the excess tax, the cannabis tax?
From our office, can do an update, he tracks the cannabis stuff.
Great.
So I'll stay, come in. Okay,
So these open?
I think we closed this out, but it opens this other issue. We closed one door and we opened the window.
Page 77, section E 316. This is House added language extending the existence of the stakeholder working group for justice involved youth. The group is set to expire on June 30th, 2025. This would continue its existence until 2027.
Okay, close that out.
Section E 316 is one of two sections relating to reports on the cost of adding a 1% increase over the previous year's funding for community contracted direct service providers. And one of these sections is for DCF and one is for Dale.
That's what 316 and 321 do?
316.1, and then the other section for DCF is a little bit later on.
And then if we change. So 316.1 is just about reporting the cost.
Right, so this would be language on the cost of adding a 1% increase for community contracted direct service providers, reporting language from DCF. And then you'll see another section later on that does a substantively similar thing for Dale.
It's probably pretty easy to do. We can leave that in, close that out.
Section E 321, GA emergency housing. I would recommend the committee keep this section open for now.
And so just to say, this is the GA program as it, I think, exists under, with the governor's proposal and what what we approved last year.
Yeah, this is.
Right, so this language was not included in the Gov Rec, but it is the same as the program.
From Act 113.
Correct.
Yeah,
From last year's budget.
from last year's
The
budget.
House didn't use it.
So if I could suggest one way we could think about this is we were in the budget adjustment pushing for an extension to June. Maybe June isn't the right extension, but I'm looking at page 80, line 8. That was the heart of the dispute.
Yeah,
We could change March 31st to a later date,
May 1st.
May 1st.
Yeah.
And maybe start that discussion that way.
That would be good.
In the
And because
conference.
H91, exactly, and H91 will then also have implications, not for this, but overall.
Yeah,
So I would concur with your recommendation.
Okay, so we'll leave that open.
I'm also wondering about the room caps, which I'm sure is all part of the discussions.
yeah.
Section E 321.1 on page 84 is House added language directing DCF to prioritize contracts with organizations that are in close proximity to the community served.
Or is this again?
Yeah.
Page 84, section E 321.1.
Yeah, I think we can. This is new language.
Yes, the House added this
It
language.
is.
I think that makes sense.
Section E 324, expedited crisis fuel assistance. This section is standard annual language. I would note, Act 113 updated statute to allow for the Commissioner for Children and Families to authorize more than one crisis fuel assistance grant per heating season. This language, as it came over in the GovRec, did not reflect that statutory change. So to align this section with that statutory change and with the language that was in Act 113, where it says that the grants authorized pursuant to this section count toward the one crisis fuel assistance grant. To align the language, it would be changed to say this section count toward the crisis fuel grants.
I think I'm a little confused.
We talked about, didn't we do this last week?
Yes, so Act 113 updated statute, changed shall to a may, so that there was the possibility of more than one grant per household per heating season. The GovRec language just didn't capture that update. So in this section, it currently says the one fuel grant. So just
That's the plural.
it would add the plural to clarify that statutory change.
It allows them during one season to get more than one fuel system grant subsidy. Is that clear, Austin?
I think I'm understanding. So the statute allows for multiple grants to be given, and this just needs to allow for the plural.
Correct. So this section appears annually. Last year, there was the change to change it from having the cap of one. So it changed that shall to a may. And this annual language, as recommended, did not reflect that statutory change.
Okay. So when we say it's standard annual language,
Is it standard? This is, or would we have this every?
This language appears each year.
and perhaps because there was a change, the standard annual language didn't match the new.
Exactly.
Okay.
It was just outdated, not by intent, but by omission.
Why would we have this in next year? I can't see a reason to put it in next year. There isn't a correction. If we're doing it every year, it would only be because we keep messing up.
This is section law.
So
Yeah.
this isn't in statute, and it's saying that the crisis fuel grants authorized in this particular section count toward the crisis fuel grants allowed per household for the winter heating season.
The crisis fuel grants are only in the budget, if we don't, there's no session or statutory law about
I believe that this relates to if they are expedited. So this is if they've applied for an expedited seasonal fuel benefit but have not received it, they are able to get crisis fuel assistance to prevent them from running out of fuel. So it's saying that expedited fuel assistance counts toward that fuel assistance grant.
It seems weird that we would do that every year and not just make that policy ongoing. Doesn't it? I know you can't.
I think that would be for the General Assembly.
I have that same question about a lot of the standard annual language, but
Yeah.
Yeah, but
maybe keep us revisiting
most
it.
of this is session law.
But if it's session law, it would still, we wouldn't have to put it in to the budget, like it would still pertain to the program.
If it's not in the session law applies to this current fiscal year, so it's in the FY '25 budget. If it did not appear in the FY '26 budget, that would not necessarily carry forward.
That's not the case for all section ones, but we can talk about it later.
I think it is, session law means it's for the year that you're in. That's why, a lot of this gets repeated every year is because it's all session law and deals with that particular year's budget.
For instance, why
Why not?
section E321 is duplicative of the Act 113 language.
That's a question, a separate question. I think a lot of this, they tweak language to deal with how much money, what it, and how it runs. The question of whether it should be permanent would,
Yeah, open question.
but in this, I don't think it's new that we allowed that second grant toward the end of the year.
No, because we changed it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Because before, a homeowner could only get one a year or one season.
Right, and
Yeah, I don't
2 years doesn't seem like a long time to me.
Senator Norris, did you have a question?
Well, I guess Senator Westman may have answered partially my question. I was wondering about the timing on this, but if it's in session law, it runs from the budgetary year from July 1 to June 30th. Because I was wondering if this was a calendar year, so it captured all of the cold months, or it was a starting month and an ending month. But if it's in session law, it would fall within the budgeted year.
It's the budget.
Okay.
But the policy is seasonal fuel benefit. I think that was an issue with per season, not per year. Winter heating season. Okay, we'll close it out because we're okay with it, but we'll have a debate later about why we had this.
Section E325, Department for Children and Families, Office of Economic Opportunity. This is standard language relating to the allocation of the appropriation E325, clarifying that OEO can use these funds to issue grants to community agencies to assist individuals experiencing homelessness. And again, this is standard annual language.
So we don't know if the language is standard, but the amount, is the amount fixed at this point?
Let me quickly check Act 113.
Because wouldn't that be dependent on the GA program? And how we sort that out?
Right, so the number increased in, so yes.
Yeah, so we may want to just hold it open.
So we'll leave it open because I think the 325 is open.
Yeah.
326.
Yes, you're right.
E326, standard annual language directing $750,000 for the replacement and repair of home heating equipment.
Okay, we'll close that out.
Section E329 added by the House, so this is the second budgetary inflation report. This one is for Dale.
Page.
Page 86, and then
So 506, can we close that out? 322?
Yes.
section E333. This is House added language directing Dale to suspend implementation of its payment reform process, that it shall not be implemented before July 1st, 2026.
Yeah, so the providers were interested in having the delay so that they could have time for getting ready. I think Dale wants it to go forward, but the House put the language in, and I think that I would concur with the House language, but can decide differently. I think we should go ahead with it.
Recommend to close it out?
I do, I recommend to close it out.
Not gonna argue with you, we'll close it out.
Section E 338, so this is the pilot fund appropriation, for Newport and Springfield.
Okay, close that out.
E 338.1, this is reporting language, directing the Department of Corrections to report to the Joint Fiscal Committee at its November 2025 meeting on the status of federal funds that may affect the provision of recovery coaching for incarcerated individuals. For the committee's awareness, the technical letter recommends striking this language as the federal grant was not funded.
So it'd be an easy report. Okay, does anybody want to lead in a meaningless report? Good, well,
I can write the report. The money's gone.
we'll strike the,
The money's gone. Bing.
Westman Rights Report.
okay, 338.2.
E 338.2 was added by the House. This relates to what was originally a $300,000 general fund appropriation in the one-time section. The House reduced that appropriation to $200,000. This would be a report on the findings of a consultant on a plan to transition the Northeast Correctional Complex or the Caledonia County Work Camp or parts of either or of both to a treatment-focused facility.
Yeah, we had that discussion in judiciary this morning, and we're going to be sending a letter to the appropriations reference to our thoughts on this. I would ask to leave it open.
Okay, we'll leave that open.
It's not positive about the consultation.
Yep.
Not positive?
The committee's decision was not positive about using the 200,000 for consultants. And the thought was if it could be used for treatment, that would be a different.
Yep.
I'd rather put 200,000 towards the recovery camp, that isn't funded.
Is that Maple?
No, that's,
No.
that,
That's just the one we just talked about.
they're gonna have a recommendation, to support the recovery camps, which is the in-between. And instead of studying the work camp and I'd rather take the 200,000 and put it right towards something that we absolutely know at this time we need.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're leaving it 345.
Section E 345 is GovRec language, removing bill back from this section of statute. Since One Care Vermont, the state's only ACO is ceasing operations.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can close that out.
Section E 500 is GovRec language, clarifying that the global commitment appropriation in section E 500 shall be used for physician claims for determining medical necessity IEPs. This is standard annual language.
Okay, right? Close that.
Section E 502 is standard annual language on the allowable uses of the appropriation in section E 502 for special education formula grants.
Okay, close that out.
Section E 503 is standard annual language relating to the Independence Place program, deeming that it shall be considered a 24-hour residential program for the purposes of reimbursement of education costs.
Seems like another example. It's pretty weird to have this as does it change from year to year?
This section actually last year erroneously referred to the Independence Place program as still belonging to Lund, and the committee had to update it to a new place. So
we'll close it out.
Section E504, this is standard annual language, clarifying that $3.9 million of the appropriation in section B504 is for adult ed and literacy providers. And
If we deal with the other thing, would that change the dollar amount?
We don't want to change,
This is just the formula, but this,
we do want to change, the formula.
How?
well, so we'll leave this open in case it changes this thing.
Okay.
Got it.
Then,
I'm having-
section,
I am having it drafted, and, as soon as we get it drafted, we'll bring it in.
section E504.2, or sorry, .1, would be open as well then. Section E504.2 on page 91 relates to adult ed, directing the secretary to pay a local adult ed and literacy provider that provides adult education secondary credential programs an amount to be calculated pursuant to the funding formula contained in state board of education rules as well. And section E504.3 is another adult ed related section requiring a report on funding.
Does the adult ed and secondary credential program get the money in E504 and E504.1?
So in E504.1 sub 5, there's the 2 million for adult ed and secondary credential program.
Right, and then in 504, it's 3.9.
Correct.
So you combine those two for their total.
Correct.
504.2, did you say anything about that?
Yes, so 504.2 is also connected to this. And then 504.3 is a report from AOE to relevant standing committees on recommendations to modernize adult education funding.
So all this will leave open for the Westman report.
Right. Section
The Westman report.
Section E507.1 is standard annual language relating to categorical aid to school districts for English learner services. And I would just flag again for the committee here that there were a number of sections preceding this section relating to the repeal of the Universal Meals Program. So those do not appear in the House version of the bill, but were in the Gov Rec.
Okay, we close this out.
Section E511 is standard annual language relating to career technical education supplemental assistance grants.
Okay, close that out.
Section E514 relates to state teachers' retirement system. Just Section E514.1, this is the third piece of that BPIC, so this could stay open.
Okay.
Section E515 is standard annual language relating to retired teachers' healthcare and medical benefits.
Is this fund the one that, I don't know if you know this, Grady, if this is the fund that the year-end constrict money goes into that same plan?
I believe so. So yes,
Sounds similar.
yes, there's the 50% is split between those two
And
things.
then this is gets 25%, so this is the annual thing, and then if there's any more, 25% goes to that. Okay, we'll close that out. University of Vermont, where's that?
Section E600, so that's the standard annual language specifying that the appropriation in B600 be split according to 112 on or about the 15th day of each calendar month.
Wait, which one are you on?
E600.
This
Oh,
just says
okay.
that UVM gets their
They get
payment
their-
monthly.
Right.
Are we afraid they're gonna spend it all? If we give it to them at the beginning of the year, they might just spend it all, and we need to give them a budget.
Exactly.
It's their allowance. E602 does the same for the Vermont State Colleges.
Okay, if they mow the lawn,
Save
okay,
some.
we're closing out those two, 603.
E603 allows for, in the event that global commitment fund monies are unavailable, Vermont State Colleges grant funding to be maintained through general fund or other state funding sources.
Shouldn't we change that Vermont
Yeah.
State Colleges?
Well, I just wondered what the impact of this is. My guess is this was done when the chance was slim or something.
No, I just mean the name.
name. Oh, the name, yeah, but what is the fiscal impact if it was their global commitment fund?
So in sub B, the state colleges shall use the global commitment appropriation to support dental hygiene, respiratory therapy, and nursing programs that graduate approximately 315 healthcare providers annually. And then sub A, I'm not sure why sub A comes before sub B here, but it says if those monies are unavailable, the total grant funding for Vermont State Colleges shall be maintained through general fund or other state funding sources.
Do we know what that number is?
I'm not sure. I would have to go to the web report to see what that global commitment appropriation in B603 is.
No, and you don't happen to know off the top of your head what kind of number that is?
What was the question?
For B603 for the allied health at Vermont State Colleges?
1.5 million global commitment fund appropriated in section B603.
Okay.
So if that is insufficient to support those programs, then they would be supported through general fund or other state funding sources.
Is there any other global commitment where we have such language?
Not to my knowledge.
I think often when global commitment is outside of the agency of human services, there is some language that just sort of specifies why it's being spent out, like what makes it an eligible expense outside of the agency of human services. So I think there's like global commitment language in the education section.
The same kind of language, like if there isn't, then
Oh,
the
do that.
general fund would, yeah, I wanted to, like, if
I don't know about that.
we're appropriating money without kind of knowing we're appropriating it, possibly.
It could be for
We're
the,
prioritizing this program over other programs. I assume if there wasn't global commitment funds, there would be there would be a shortage of global commitment funds for all sorts of programs. And this prioritizes this program over all the others.
right, this was to get more nursing students and others in clinical placement. I think it's clinical placement,
I'm not saying it's not the top priority, I'm
No.
just saying
yeah,
that
but
this
understood.
language makes it the top priority.
Yeah, understood.
Well, and specifically, we picked out areas that there are shortfalls, and
There it is.
and these reflect what the legislature has said was shortfalls. I think your committee
Yeah, we supported it.
did a lot of
But
work
not,
around
but
this.
we haven't talked about it this year. We probably won't either.
No, but
In the
the
past.
shortfalls are still there.
Right.
Or could there be a unavailability of global commitment funds just for this program? Or would it be kind of a global commitment and availability? Do you understand?
I do. I think it would be available.
Yeah, if you could find out,
Yeah, it would have to be cut.
we'll close it out, but I just
Yeah.
want it for informational purposes.
Do we know the figure is 1.5? Is that what we're saying? Or?
So Grady said you want to trust Grady.
But.
At your own risk.
We're good, Grady.
I guess I'm wondering what percentage of the program is supported by global commitment? Like, is it the whole? Is it
Yeah,
typically the
1.5
whole-
to global commitment or 1.5 to general fund
portion?
There's 1.5 global commitment, appropriated for this in B603. There's, $297,000 from the general fund appropriated in that section.
So it's kind of the obligation would be the delta of those two numbers.
I would presume so, but I would check.
It does seem weird to me that it's,
It's a good match.
Rising
Is that
to
a
the-
60-40 match? That feels,
like a
it's more than that,
90-10.
90-10. It's
yeah.
a 90-10 match. It's good for us.
That's right. But there's other matches like that. we
Yes,
can go-
yes, there are.
I don't know why it would be 910.
I don't either.
No idea why the match would be.
Maybe it's
80.
because, maybe it's the clinical site.
I mean, it would be more like, if it's 200, so. It
200
would be 85-15. Okay, we'll get more information.
Please.
Let's move to 605.
That'd be great.
605, this is standard annual language relating to the allocations of the funds appropriated to VSAC.
VSAC. Okay,
Oh,
we'll close it out.
E605.1, this is standard annual language relating to the need-based stipend for dual enrollment and early college students. So again, specifying where those funds are coming from the education fund and general fund appropriated to the Vermont Student Assistance Corporation.
Okay, we can close that out.
Section E715 on page 98, and then the following sections continuing on to page 100 relate to the repeal of the sunset of the clean water surcharge for the property transfer tax.
So when was gonna be the sunset? In, does it say what the, it says it's
Yes.
repealed. Was it gonna be repealed this year?
I know.
Do you know?
July 1st, 2027, I believe.
27.
Okay.
Sorry, so this is
Oh, yeah.
repealing the sunset. No.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Yes,
Getting ahead of it a little bit.
let's keep it in.
Okay,
That brings us to section E900 on page 100.
okay,
The administration's technical letter did have a recommended update. So the technical letter included the addition of a couple of sections that would create a special fund relating to the electric vehicle supply equipment appropriation. I would recommend that the committee keep this open pending transportation committee discussions on this topic. It's the best way to approach this.
does it relate to that other tip thing that we talked about earlier?
Yes, so the technical letter recommends adding in language here, including electric vehicle supply equipment programs at ACCD in allowable uses here, if a special fund that they recommend is not created. So there are multiple recommendations in the technical letter relating to that electric vehicle supply equipment appropriation.
Okay. Guess we gotta read that again.
Where is that?
I'm looking for that.
The technical one?
Yeah, which
Yeah.
number are you on right now?
This is E900 on page 101.
So we went by. We went by 99.
Yes, sorry, so
Yeah,
there were,
there is
Yeah,
Nothing there.
nothing there. Okay.
So, yeah, we'll look at that. Effective dates, we'll leave those open. Okay. I was gonna ask Emily if she had to leave and then she left.
Can I bring
Yes,
something
yes.
for Grady, I think?
Gone, really.
So I don't know where it goes.
Yeah, 16. I
It's,
don't know if she was ran out of time or just sent down. Okay, center line.
so, right, it's the intensive recovery housing pilot that, the Department of Health had asked to have was in the governor's, budget. There was a request for a total 1.5 million with 617 plus on the base and 500 on one time. And it's for, having a 15-bed home-like residential recovery spot for folks with substance use disorder, mental health, and co-occurring disorders with services provided. They are sending out an RFP on this because they've already been working in communities to make this happen. There's no place for it right now because it was taken out by the House. And there was no language and nothing to support it. So it's what I've been talking about
Right.
previously.
What's it called again?
Intensive Recovery Housing Project. And I met with the Deputy Commissioner of Health yesterday, and then, John Donahue, asking for language so that we could at least look at it and have it under consideration.
Is that something that was in the gov, right?
It was, but there was no language.
Right.
And,
The House bill
but it is
didn't have
something
it.
that's needed. I mean, honestly, I'm not positive, but I think that the place that's most ready for this and might end up, supporting it is, the Rutland area.
Okay.
So, can you send this to Grady?
Okay. Well, we were gonna hear from Emily on the tobacco funds that I wanted to do. I meant to stop and after she had a deadline. We can go on break, sorry.